السلام عليكم، أنا الطالبة دانا أبو بكر. إن شاء الله اليوم راح أشرح معكم hair, nails and skin repair اللي الدكتور درويش عطانا إياه self study. Hairs are elongated, keratinized structures that form within epidermal invaginations in the skin. هلا epidermal invagination هيها أوكي. هاي epidermal invagination بتكون بالديرمس، هي الديرمس وهي الابيديرمس. طيب وهي الابيديرمال invagination اللي حكينا عنها. هلا inside the epidermal invagination عندنا الهير follicle. الهير follicle اللي بيطلع منها الشعر. The color, size, shape and texture of hairs vary according to age, genetic background and region of the body. يعني مثلا خلينا ناخذ an example على genetic background. نعرف احنا انه Africans are known for their curly hair while Europeans are known for their straight hair and so on. All skin has at least minimal hair except for the glabrous skin of the palms اللي هو كف اليد, soles باطن القدم, lips, glans penis بالmale reproductive system, وعندنا كمان الكليتورس and labia minora بالfemale reproductive system. Hairs grow discontinuously يعني not in sync with periods of growth followed by periods of rest, and this growth does not occur synchronously in all regions of the body or even in the same area. يعني مثلا عندنا a region of the body, one region of the body. هلا هاي region of the body ممكن نلاقي عليها كم شعرة بالgrowth process while كم شعرة ثانيين بالresting process. فما الشعر ما بيكون in the same periods of growth at the same time أبدا. The growing hair follicle has a terminal dilation called the hair bulb. خلينا نشوف الهير bulb. هاي الهير follicle. نغير اللون. هاي الهير follicle هون. لو بنطلع هون رح نلاقي دقيقة. هاي الهير follicle. طيب لو بنطلع هون رح نلاقي إنه هون في عنا a dilation and this dilation is known as the hair bulb. وعندنا كمان الdermal papilla. هلا الdermal papilla is also known as the hair papilla and it is a part of the dermis. It inserts into the base of the hair bulb and contains a capillary network required to sustain the hair follicle. هلا how does it sustain the hair follicle? It nourishes it by supplying oxygen and nutrients. Okay. هاي الdermal papilla هون زي ما احنا شايفين هي بتطلع من دقيقة. هي بتطلع من الديرمس. هاي الديرمس احنا حكينا انه هذا كله الديرمس. طيب هيها زي ما احنا شايفين هي بتطلع من الديرمس وهي هون هاي الكابيلاري نتورك اللي it's responsible to sustain the hair follicle عشان الشعر grows in a healthy way. Keratinocytes continuous with those of the basal epidermis cover the dermal papilla. يبقى the dermal papilla is covered by keratinocytes and these cells form the matrix. هلا بنشوف الماتريكس of the elongating hair root. وعندنا كمان الهير شافت. الهير شافت is made of keratin and it is the exposed part of the hair. هاي الهير شافت. كل هاي الهير شافت البارت اللي exposed, the external part, البارت اللي احنا بنشوفه. وعندنا هاي الهير root which is the internal part, the internal part of the hair. The keratinocytes of the hair bulb are generally similar to those in the basal and spinous layers of the epidermis, and they divide rapidly in a matrix region immediately around the dermal papilla and then undergo keratinization, melanin accumulation, and terminal differentiation. يعني بنفهم من هون ان الماتريكس. خلينا اورجيكم الماتريكس. هاي الماتريكس. هذا هو الماتريكس. هذا كله الماتريكس. اوكي هيو هذا الماتريكس في جوا an intense mitotic activity where keratinocytes divide rapidly. وعندنا هون كمان بيصير keratinization to form the hairs. وعندنا كمان melanin accumulation عشان الcolor وكمان terminal differentiation. يعني من خلال هذا الكلام نفهم إنه الماتريكس is responsible for the color of the hair. Okay. Melanocytes in the hair bulb matrix transforms melanosomes into epithelial cells that will later differentiate to form the cells. يبقى melanocytes they transfer melanosomes into epithelial cells. بيودي melanocytes بيجي بياخد melanosomes بيوديها على epithelial cells بعدين that will differentiate to form the hair. Unlike the epidermis in which all keratinocytes give rise to the stratum corneum, cells in the hair root matrix differentiate with variable amounts of types of keratin. The keratin of the hair is harder and more compact than that of the stratum corneum. الstratum corneum اللي هو uppermost layer of the epidermis شرحناه قبل هيك. And it بيكون harder and more compact to help maintain the structure of the hair shaft much longer. مش احنا حكينا ان الhair shaft is made of keratin. فالهير أصلا احنا نعرف إنه it's very fine، فالكيراتين بيكون more compact and harder عشان إنه يساعد to maintain the hair shaft much longer. In most thick hairs, large vacuolated and moderately keratinized cells, moderately يعني شوي, not completely keratinized, form the central medulla of the hair root. وبعدين عنا heavily keratinized, which الcortex بيكون heavily keratinized, and densely packed cells which make up the cortex around the medulla. يبقى عنا مثلا هاي المدلة هون. Okay, هاي الcortex covering the medulla. The most peripheral cells of the hair root comprise the cuticle, which is a thin layer of heavily keratinized cells. برضو بيكون squamous cells يعني flat cells covering the cortex. يعني هاي عنا الcuticle. يبقى نعيد من أول المدلة اللي هي large vacuolated and moderately keratinized cells forming the medulla. بعدين عنا الcortex which covers the medulla and it's heavily keratinized and densely packed cells. وبعدين عندنا الكيوتيكل اللي هو a thin layer of heavily keratinized squamous cells, flat cells covering the cortex. The outermost cells of the hair bulb are continuous with the epithelial root sheath, in which two layers can be recognized. عندنا internal root sheath and the external root sheath. The internal root sheath completely surrounds the initial part of the hair root but degenerates above the level of the attached sebaceous glands. وكمان external root sheath which covers the internal sheath and extends all the way to the epidermis where it is continuous with the basal and spinous layers. شو يعني؟ هلا internal root sheath هيها أول شي خلينا نشوف نغير اللون عشان نميز. هاي sebaceous filaments هيهم هدول. هاي internal root sheath. It covers the hair follicle و it degenerates يعني it stops لحد ما sebaceous filaments they're not linked with the hair follicle. وبعدين عنا external root sheath which covers the internal root sheath. It does not degenerate like the internal root sheath. It blends in with the cells of the epidermis. يعني internal root sheath covers the hair follicle and it degenerates where the sebaceous filaments stops. وبعدين covering the internal root sheath and the external root sheath which does not generate but it blends in with the cells of the epidermis اللي هم البازل cells على ما أتوقع. أيوة, the basal cells and spinous layers of the epidermis. Separating the hair follicle عندنا الglassy membrane which is made up of thickened basement membrane. It separates the hair follicle from the dermis. هيها خلينا نشوف اللي هي the outer part يعني it separates the hair follicle. هاي طلع عنا كتير. هاي مثلا هاي الglassy membrane هاي it separates هاي dermis. هذا dermis. هاي الfollicle. الglassy membrane separates the hair follicle from the dermis. عندنا كمان the erector pili muscle which is a small bundle of smooth muscle cells extending from the midpoint of the fibrous sheath to the dermal papillary layer. خلينا نشوفها. هاي هون erector pili muscle. الأوريجين تبعها بتيجي من epidermal cells والinsertion تبعها in the middle of the hair follicle. It's attached to the connective tissue root sheath. Contraction لما يصير في contracting بهاي المسل the hair follicle will become vertical, therefore the hair will stand up straight. يعني if this contracts, if the area of insertion and origin تصغر يعني هاي مثلا تصغر بتصير هالقد بس. Okay, the hair will stand up straight instead of هي زي ما احنا شايفين مايلة. Contraction of the erector pili muscle will cause the hair to stand up straight rather than تكون مايلة. Okay. Contraction of these muscle cells عم بقرأ هون. Contraction of these muscle cells pulls the hair shaft to a more erect position يعني a standing up position usually when it's cold or in an effort when it's cold in an effort to trap a layer of warm air near the skin. هلا this is a reflex mechanism. لما بيكون الدنيا برد the erector pili muscle will contract. كل الهيرز رح يوقفوا لما بيصير في contraction وهذا الهيرز كلهم لما يوقفوا مثلا اللي على ايدينا it will trap a layer of warm air near the skin عشان تدفي السكن. وكمان مثلا لما احنا نكون خايفين same thing will happen هذا اللي بيؤدي للجوز بامبس. In regions where the hair is fine, contraction of erector pili muscle is seen to produce tiny bumps on the skin surface اللي هما الجوز bumps, where each contracting muscle distorts the attached dermis. إيش يعني؟ يعني في عنا أماكن عليها وبر اللي هو الشعر الفاين fine hairs. هاي we can't see the hair standing up, بس إحنا إيش بنشوف goose bumps أشعريرة يعني. Okay. As mentioned earlier, the hairs grow asynchronously, يعني not in sync, cyclically, different cycles of hair growth and at different rates in different regions of the body. صح؟ The hair growth cycle has 3 major phases. أنا هون كتبت طريقة كيف نحفظهم بالترتيب الألفابيتيك order تبعهم هي A, C, T. الأناجين اللي هو أول حرف في A بيكون أول phase، وهاي اللي بتكون a generally long phase of mitotic activity and growth. Okay, يعني هاي it's the phase where the hair grows. بعدين عنا a brief period, a small period of arrested growth يعني inactivity. هي استخدم الهايلايتر. Arrested growth اللي هي inactivity and regression of the hair bulb. Regression يعني it becomes smaller, the hair bulb becomes smaller. هاي الكاتجن phase. يعني يبقى عندنا هلا anagen phase اللي هي a long period of mitotic activity and growth. This is where the hair grows. بعدين عندنا catagen phase. هاي الفيز it's a small period of time. وبهاي ال period of time بيكون عندنا arrested growth, inactivity and regression of the hair bulb. يعني the hair bulb becomes smaller. The anagen and catagen are followed by telogen. And in the telogen phase, it's the final phase, final period of inactivity. Hi, it's a long period of inactivity. مش نفس catagen. Catagen is a brief period of inactivity. Telogen is the long period of inactivity during which the hair may shed. يعني هون ممكن يوقع الشعر. anagen, long period of mitotic activity and growth, followed by catagen, a brief period of arrested growth. Arrested growth يعني inactivity and regression of the hair bulb. The hair bulb becomes smaller, followed by telogen, in which it's the final long period of inactivity during which the hair may shed. هلا it starts again when the erector pili muscle produces the progenitor cells. High, it starts the next growth cycle for the matrix of a new hair bulb. A new hair bulb is formed. Hair growth on the face and pubis is strongly influenced by sex hormones, especially androgens, and begins at puberty. ففي a few regions of our body الهير ببلش ينمو فيهم when we hit puberty, and it's influenced by sex hormones. خلينا نشوف medical application. Loss of hair to produce baldness and alopecia results from the complex combination of genetic and hormonal factors that is not well understood. هلا بحكي لنا هون انه في عنا a loss of hair بيؤدي لبالدنس، وكمان بيؤدي لبالدنس، وكمان بيؤدي لألوبيشيا اللي هي الثعلبة. هاي it results from a complex combination of genetic and hormonal factors that is not well understood. لسه احنا مش فاهمينها كويس. Arresting mitotic activity in the hair matrix during cancer chemotherapy اللي هو العلاج للسرطان disrupts both the function of the structural integrity of the hair follicles and usually leads to rapid reversible alopecia. يعني لما احنا نوقف العلاج الهير رح يرجع ينمو. خليني اورجيكم بس صور للبالدنس and alopecia. هاي الالوبيشيا الثعلبة، وهي البالدنس. هاي البريماتشر بالدينج اللي هو قبل العمر، لأنه بعد عمر معين مثلا بعد 50-60 سنة it is natural for the hair to start balding. بس هاي الالوبيشيا اللي هي الثعلبة بمناطق معينة من السكالب the hair stops growing in it, and it can be caused by chemotherapy and it is reversible when caused by chemotherapy. بس لما تكون natural it's not reversible، يعني ما بنقدر نصلح المشكلة. وهلأ بدنا ننتقل للnails. A similar process of keratinization also produces the nails. So the nails are produced by keratinization. Nails are hard plates of keratin on the dorsal surface of each distal phalanx. الديستال phalanx اللي هو tips of our fingers. لو احنا لما نطلع على ايدينا بنشوف our nails وبنشوف تحت where our nails are. البارت اللي تحته هو اسمه distal phalanx. Okay, the proximal part of the nail is the nail root. The nail root is covered by a fold of skin from which the epidermal stratum corneum extends as the cuticle or eponychium. So what does this mean? عنا الnail root هي الnail root تبعنا. The nail root is covered by a cuticle. هاي الكيوتيكل. Cuticle is a fold of skin, and this fold of skin is an extension of epidermal stratum corneum. It covers the nail root. Okay. هاي النيل روت سوري الكيوتيكل تبعنا هي، وهذا السمول لاين شايفينه هذا. تحت الكيوتيكل في عنا النيل روت. Okay. The nail plate is bound to a bed of epidermis. This bed of epidermis is the nail bed. So the nail bed is a bed of epidermis and the nail bed is bound to the nail plate. طيب, the nail bed is bound to the nail plate and the nail bed is a bed of epidermis which contains only the basal and spinous epidermal layers. So a quick recap on the nail root. The nail root is covered by a fold of skin. This fold of skin is an extension of epidermal stratum corneum, which is called cuticle or eponychium. And كمان the nail plate, which is bound to the nail bed, and the nail bed is a bed of epidermis. The nail bed only contains basal and spinous epidermal layers. Okay. The nail root forms the nail matrix. So the nail matrix is formed from the nail root. وبالnail matrix في عنا division of cells. ففي عنا هون كمان mitotic activity نفس ما في عنا بالhair matrix. في عنا بالnail matrix كمان نفس الشيء. Both of them في عندهم mitotic activity. The cells also move distally and become keratinized in a process somewhat similar to hair formation but without keratohyalin granules. Okay. The nail root matures and hardens as the nail plate. نفس الشيء احنا حكينا انه ال maturity and hardening of the nail root نفسه بيصير فيه بالnail plate. Okay. وعندنا كمان continuous growth in the matrix pushes the nail plate forward over the nail bed. شو يعني؟ لما when our nails grow, how do our nails grow? By the continuous pushing of, not the continuous, sorry. Our nails grow by the pushing of the matrix. It pushes the nail plate forward over the nail bed. So the nail matrix is responsible for pushing the nail plate forward over the nail bed. When this happens بيصير في عنا growth of the nail at a rate of about 3 millimeters per month for the fingernails and about 1 millimeter per month for our toenails. And this is an estimation. It varies from every person, from every individual. Okay. The distal end of the plate becomes free of the nail at the epidermal fold called hyponychium. So عندنا hyponychium و eponychium. Sorry. The hyponychium is the epidermal fold والeponychium is the skin fold اللي هو الcuticle. Okay. So what does this mean? It means إنه في عنا هاي الفري edge. الفري edge, why is it called free edge? It's called a free edge لأنه ما في أي skin تحته. هاي الhyponychium. It's where the free edge starts. السكن اللي تحت directly تحته is called hyponychium. Okay, and it's an epidermal fold. وكمان the nearly transparent nail plate and thin epithelium of the nail bed provide a useful window on the amount of oxygen in the blood by showing the color of blood in the dermal vessels. إيش يعني؟ يعني if we look at our nails إحنا we can tell how healthy we are oxygen wise by looking at the color of our nails. The pinker the nails, the healthier they are because of more presence of the vessels, which means more presence of oxygen. Okay. خلينا نشوف الصورة هاي بسرعة. هاي النيل فولد هون هيها. هاي اللانيلا هاي اللي هي الوايت بارت. هلا احنا ما بعرف إذا انتم سمعتوا بس كانوا دائما يحكوا انه الوايت thing اللي على النيلز تبعونا is caused by calcium deficiency, which is completely false. ما في لها أي أهمية أبدا اللانيلا. It's just there and ما بيكون على كل النيلز ومو كل individuals عندهم this white circle, half a circle اللي بتكون موجودة. هاي النيل بادي بيكون هون والكيوتيكل. هاي النيل بادي. هاي الكيوتيكل اللي احنا حكينا عنه under the cuticle عنا النيل روت. اوكي. هاي هون انا كتبت عليها شوي. نفس ما حكينا الابونيشيوم extension of stratum corneum. لانها no importance whatsoever. وعنا النيل بادي اوكي. وعندنا كمان هون النيل matrix containing active epidermal cells. وكمان nail matrix is responsible for the growth of the nails. hair matrix is responsible for the growth of the hair as well as the color of the hair. nail matrix is responsible for the growth of the nails. وهلا بدنا ننتقل للسكين ريبير. انا عامله small summary هون رح ندرس عليها، وكمان حاطه فيها الصور وكل اشي، وان شاء الله I'll share it with the post اللي فيها اللينك لذس فيديو. بس خلينا نقرأ هون a small introduction بعدين ننتقل للسمري اللي أنا عملتها. Skin has a good capacity for repair. إيش يعني؟ يعني the skin regenerates itself, it repairs itself, and this is very important in this exposed and easily damaged organ. هلا احنا نعرف إنه the skin is an external organ, it's the largest organ in the body. درسناه بأول part in this chapter. this is one way in which the skin protects itself, it regenerates itself. برضو أخذناه بأول part of this chapter. And it repairs itself in a process called cutaneous wound healing. And this happens whether the scar was initiated surgically or accidentally. يعني صار عنا جرح من عملية أو بالغلط. Whatever the injury has to go through the cutaneous wound healing process. And the cutaneous wound healing process involves several overlapping stages that vary in duration with the size of the wound. يعني الwound صغيرة will heal faster than a larger wound. Okay. هلا بننتقل للسمري اللي أنا عملتها هون and هاي شاملة إن شاء الله. The stages of wound healing في عنا 3 stages. هاي stage number 1 اللي هو an inflammation stage. Stage number 2 is the proliferative phase, and stage number 3 is the remodeling stage. The first stage consists of blood from cut vessels coagulating in the wound. يعني هاي الwound تبعتنا اوكي هي بتكون يعني whatever إذا كانت الwound deep or not, blood will start to gush and fill up the wound اللي هون, and هذا البلد اللي احنا بنشوفه gushing when we get injured. Okay, the inflammation stage typically lasts for 2 to 3 days, and it's what prepares the wound for healing. No actual healing happens in the inflammation phase, but it's very important because it prepares the wound for healing. Actual healing starts عنا the second stage proliferative phase, and in this stage granular tissue is formed caused by fibroblasts. So the fibroblasts form granular tissue that come into the injured area. Okay, هاي fibroblasts هيهم, and they start to heal the injury. The fibroblasts will also secrete growth factors which encourage new blood vessels to grow in the area, and this is very important because the blood vessels will bring in oxygen and nutrients that are needed for a healthy healing process. وعندنا كمان the epithelial cells which will start to form around the wound edge, allowing the wound to retract. شو يعني retract؟ يعني الwound رح تصغر هيك، رح تتضيق، رح تنشد. وكمان شغلة كتير مهمة لازم نعرفها إنه the wound the healing of the wound happens from the bottom up. أول شيء the bottom part starts to heal, and then the healing will go up as it heals يعني. it heals by retracting. الwound بتنشد يعني the wound will heal from the side. this is what they mean by retracting, and who's responsible for that? The epithelial cells is responsible for retracting of the wound. The fibroblasts will lay down collagen-rich tissue in the dermis called granulation tissue, and this is what replaces the blood clot and eventually will replace the new skin after it gets remodeled in the third stage, which is called remodeling. In this stage, this stage begins around 3 weeks after injury, and in this stage the epidermis is re-established but has lost the ability to produce new hair or glands. So the epidermis is regenerated, it's repaired, but it has lost the ability to produce new hair or glands. وعندنا بعدين the granulation tissue will undergo remodeling, and scar tissue, which replaces the injured skin, is produced. The scar will eventually fade away in time, but the tissue will go back to its normal form. So عندنا let's do a quick recap. Stage 1, the blood from the cut vessels coagulate the wound, يعني it fills up the wound. The inflammation phase lasts for 2 to 3 days and it prepares the wound for healing. Stage 2, epithelial cells will start to retract the wound. Fibroblasts will form granular tissue that will come into the injured area and start healing as well. Fibroblasts will also encourage the growth of new blood vessels in the area, which will bring in oxygen and nutrients. بعدين عندنا stage 3, which will begin around 3 weeks after injury, and in this stage the epidermis is re-established but has lost the ability to produce new hair or glands. وعندنا كمان the granulation tissue, which will undergo remodeling, hence the name of the stage, and scar tissue is produced. So the granulation tissue is remodeled and it will become scar tissue, and the scar tissue will replace injured skin. By then the scar will fade away in time, tissue will go back to its normal form as if nothing happens, and this is how the skin protects itself and repairs itself. وهيك إن شاء الله بنكون خلصنا آخر part of chapter 18 اللي هي السكن. وإن شاء الله الأسبوع الجاي رح نبلش ب cardiovascular system as per the doctor. بس خلينا نشوف هون عندنا سؤالين سريعين يعني موجودين بالكتاب 3 and 4 اللي هم لهم دخل بالانشرح بعد الفيديو. أول سؤال بحكي أنا حاطة جواب. أول سؤال بحكي cells responsible for producing the pigment for dark hair are located in which of the following. إحنا بنعرف الماتريكس لأنه في melanin accumulation which happens in the matrix. وبعدين the next question اللي هي which of the following separates the hair follicle from the connective tissue of the dermis. اللي glassy membrane إذا تتذكر اللي هو basement membrane اللي بيفرق الhair follicle من dermis. And this is the end of the video. I hope you guys understood and benefited from it. وإن شاء الله بنشوفكم بالأسبوع الجاي.